Now I'll show you how to restore Photoshop's default shortcuts, which can be handy if, for example, you're sharing a machine and you like D keys, but your coworker prefers Photoshop's default shortcuts, or perhaps she has her own custom shortcuts. In which case, you can switch between saved shortcut sets anytime you like. I'll also show you how to restore the default shortcut for a single command. And so, by way of example, I'll go up to the Edit menu and choose Search, which by default has a shortcut of Control F here on the PC or Command F on the Mac. Now, in another piece of software, the search command might let you search for text inside of a document. That's not how it works inside Photoshop. You're either going to search for a feature or a tutorial or a stock image. And so, for example, let's say I enter the word undo. Then Photoshop is going to offer me a handful of features related to undoing inside Photoshop. And so, for example, if I click on the History Brush tool, then Photoshop will automatically select the History Brush here inside the vertical toolbox. That's not what I want, however, so I'm going to switch back to the rectangular marquee, which you can get by pressing the M key, and then I'll return to the Edit menu and once again choose Search. And notice that I can bring up the History panel. The Revert command is dimmed, and that's because I don't have any unsaved changes inside this particular document. And then finally, notice this guy right here. That is the Undo command, and Photoshop is showing me exactly what I'm going to undo. In this case, layer visibility. And so if I go ahead and click on that item, then I will undo the last action I performed, which was to turn on this coaster layer right here. All right, the thing is, the search feature is pretty limited. It does not search inside dialog boxes, which means you can't find preference settings. So for example, let's say I double click on this layer mask thumbnail right here, and that ends up taking me to the Select and Mask workspace, which is not what I want at all. Instead, I just want to bring up the Properties panel. So I'll go ahead and cancel out here. Now, I know there's a preference setting that lets me switch back and forth, but I can't remember what it is. So what I do, of course, is to go up to the Edit menu. That's going to be the Photoshop menu on the Mac. Choose Preferences, not nearly so far down the menu on the Mac, and then choose General, which itself has a keyboard shortcut of Control-K or Command-K on the Mac. And then I would just hunt around. I can see that it's not here inside the General panel. Maybe it's file handling. I might read every single one of these items to make sure it's not what I'm looking for. Turns out you have to switch to Tools right here, and it's this guy. Double-click Layer Mask launches Select and Mask Workspace. You want to turn it off, and then click OK. And that way, when you double-click on a Layer Mask thumbnail, you bring up the Properties panel, which is more like it. And by the way, if you loaded D keys, I've given you a shortcut for this panel, which is F10. So obviously the F10 key is going to bring up the Properties panel, but it's also going to hide it, which I find to be extremely useful. All right, but let's say all I can remember about that checkbox is that it has the word Layer Mask in it. Then I'd go up to the Edit menu and choose Search, and I would go ahead and replace Undo with Layer Mask like so, and that does not give me any preference settings. I can, however, see that I can delete the Layer Mask and that it now has a keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-P or Command-Option-P on the Mac for poof. However, it doesn't show me any of the commands that allow me to create a layer mask, with the exception of a vector mask. So it's a pretty odd collection of commands, which is why I decided to give the search command a slip and reassign Control-F or Command-F on the Mac to the last applied filter. And to demonstrate what that looks like, I'll go ahead and twirl open the doodle group right there, select the circles layer, and then press Control-F or Command-F on the Mac, and that reapplies the last applied filter, which in my case happens to be radial blur. You can see that it's off-center, however, so I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. And now, thanks to the fact that I reassigned Control-F or Command-F to that last assigned filter, I can now press Control-Alt-F here on the PC or Command-Option-F on the Mac to bring back the radial blur dialog box. And then, very inexact science right here, I'll go ahead and drag this center point to, let's say, right about there, and I'll click OK, and I get a much more centered effect. All right, but let's say you disagree with me. You like the search function, and you're not that concerned about the last applied filter. Or, as you'll see, if you're working on the Mac, things are a little bit different. In that case, you can restore Photoshop's default shortcuts by going up to the Edit menu and choosing the Keyboard Shortcuts command, which is going to bring up this dialog box right here. And then you can change the set to any shortcut set that you saved in the past, including Photoshop defaults. So I'll go ahead and switch that guy back, and then I'll twirl open the Edit menu, and I'll scroll down like so, and you can see that I have now reinstated a shortcut of Control F or Command F on a Mac to the search command, at which point I'll click OK in order to accept that change. So now here in a PC, if I go up to the filter menu, I can see that Radial Blur has a keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-F, at least here on the PC. And so what that means is if I press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change, and I now press Control-Alt-F, then I'm just going to reapply the filter according to its previous settings. Now, on the Mac, things are a little bit different. At least these days they are. And so here I am looking at the default shortcuts. I'm also looking at the bottom of page 14 of the Macintosh document, at which point you can see that by default, Command-Control-F assigns the last filter. If you want to bring up the dialog box, then you press Command-Control-Option-F. And that's because on the Mac, you can add the Control key as a modifier, and that's the Control key spelled out, by the way. On a PC, you don't have a fourth modifier key that Photoshop recognizes in any case. All right, so I'm going to switch back to Photoshop here. And I'll once again return to the Edit menu and choose Keyboard Shortcuts. And that will bring back this dialog box. And I'm going to switch back to D keys for Photoshop CC. At least that's what I named it. And I'll go ahead and scroll down the list until I find Search. Now let's say you like D keys in general. It's just the search function that bugs you. Then go ahead and select Search and click on this guy, Use Default. And that'll bring you back to Control F or Command F on the Mac. At which point you're going to see this message telling you that it was formerly assigned to last filter. And to fix that, you can go ahead and click Accept and go to Conflict. And that will go ahead and select that command. And then you can click on the Use Default button in order to bring back its keyboard shortcut, which again on the PC is Control-Alt-F. On the Mac, it's Command-Control-F. And so on the PC, you're going to get this warning that the Alt key is not going to bring back the dialog box. Well, that's just the way it is. And so I'll go ahead and click on this hard drive with a ... in order to save the shortcut set under a different name. And I'll go ahead and call it D keys for Photoshop with search, let's say. And then I'll go ahead and click Save in order to save that set. And now you can see I can switch back and forth between them as much as I like. I can even go ahead and reinstate the clean version of D keys for Photoshop CC and click OK, and that alternate set is still selected. Now, I want to show you one more thing. For you Macintosh users, I'll go ahead and switch over here. I have gone ahead and reassigned Command-Control-F. That's why it's got a red strike through. And so I'll go ahead and switch over to the D keys for the Mac document. Once again, I'm scrolled down to the bottom of this time page 15, because we have 2 pages for function keys. And you can see while I've assigned Command-F to the last applied filter, I've gone ahead and assigned Command-Control-F to the search function. I've also, just by the way of an FYI, assigned Command-Control-T to the transform selection command under the select menu, which allows you to free transform selection outlines independently of the image. Alas, I cannot do that for you PC people because you do not have a fourth modifier key that Photoshop can employ. And that's how you restore Photoshop's default keyboard shortcuts, either whole hog or on a command-by-command basis.